Well, I will welcome you, David Green, Cultural Alliance, but I want to hand over to our moderator, Steve DiCostanzo. I want to thank him very much for agreeing to take the chair today. So Steve,
good. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, David. And thank you all for joining us here, and welcome to Create the Vote, the Electoral Candidates Forum on Arts and Culture for Fairfield County. It's organized by the Cultural Alliance of Fairfield County. And yes, I'm Steve DiCostanzo, General Manager of a nonprofit community radio station, WPKN. This is the second in a continuing series of 5 candidate, let's see if we can. All right, this is a second in a continuing series of 5 candidate forums held under the umbrella of the CT Arts Alliance's Create the Vote CT program. The CT Arts Alliance is a statewide membership nonprofit building the political, financial, and grassroots support to strengthen the arts across Connecticut. Create the Vote Connecticut is a campaign to bring the role of the arts and culture in the economic and spiritual life of the state to the attention of our lawmakers and legislative candidates. As part of the campaign, the CT Arts Alliance sent 6 questionnaires to all legislative candidates in the state. There were 78 candidates who in our coastal Fairfield County area, of whom 14 completed their questionnaires. We should recognize Toni Boucher, Lucy Dathan, Keith Denning, Kimberly Fiorello, Sujata Gadkar-Wilcox, Chris Green, Toni Hwang, Sarah Keitt, Jennifer Leeper, Cece Maher, Don Mastronardi, Cristin McCarthy Vahey, David Michel, and David Rutigliano for answering these surveys. All of these, we invited 6 people to take part in tonight's forum. The candidates tonight in alphabetical order. You can raise your hand and identify yourself. Toni Boucher, now more than just a photograph. So she's a Republican and candidate for Senate, District 26, Wilton, Ridgefield, Reading, Bethel, and parts of New Canaan and Westport. When I lived in Reading, you were my rep as well. So now I live in Black Rock. State Representative Lucy Dathan, could you identify yourself? Thank you for joining us. She's a Democrat, House District 142, representing Norwalk and New Canaan. We also have State Representative Kimberly Fiorello. Kimberly.
Hi there.
How are you?
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, she's representing the House District 149, which covers Greenwich and Stamford. Also, Sujata Gadkar-Wilcox. How are you? Thank you. Democrat, House District 123 in Trumbull. Also, we have Chris Green.
Hello.
Chris is a Democrat, Senate District 26, representing Shelton, Seymour.
21.
And 21? Okay. Senate District 21, Shelton, Seymour, and Monroe. And also, last but not least, Don Mastronardi.
Hello.
There he is. How are you doing? Good.
Guys.
Republican, House District 142, representing Norwalk and New Canaan. So welcome to all 6 of you. Thank you for participating. And we're going to be asking 6 questions of the members here assembled of the Cultural Alliance. We've got 6 different members of the Cultural Alliance of Fairfield County. They also happen to be constituents living and working within the districts represented by our candidates tonight. They're going to introduce themselves, but I would like to just go through quickly and identify each and every one of them. Let's start with Lou Ursone. Lou is Executive Director of Curtain Call Theater in Stamford. Welcome. Miggs Burrows. Miggs, how are you?
Hi,
Artist, graphic designer, and co-founder of the Artist Collective of Westport. Good friend Rick Reyes. Rick.
How are you?
Rick is a singer, songwriter, band leader of the Cosmic Hebrews. He's also a businessman. He's a sales representative for Maxwell Fabrics and Hallman Furniture from Fairfield. And David Green. Thank you, David, for putting this together. Our Executive Director of the Cultural Alliance of Fairfield County based in Norwalk, and David lives in Fairfield. Also wanted to identify Wendy Roseberry.
Hello.
Wendy, how are you?
I'm fine,
Wendy,
thank you.
The executive director of Roseberry Crest and a spouse to artist Brian Whelan, both living in Wilton. And also, it's nice to see Janet Evelyn. Janet, how are you?
I am doing great.
Good. Janet's the executive director of the Norwalk International Cultural Exchange, or NICE for short, and she lives in Norwalk. So each candidate will have up to 90 seconds to answer each question. I think I'm going to be on the clock, and I'll be watching the times. The audience is invited to enter questions in the chat box, and we will put them to the candidates at the end of the session if there's any time left. So I think we're going to kick things off with Lou. Lou, you have a question, and then we're going to go right down the list.
Sure. Thank you all for being here. I'm a Connecticut lifer and been very active in the arts community as an actor, as a director, as a producer, and I've probably visited, I'm going to guess maybe half of the thousands of cultural organizations in this state in my 63 years, and performed at everywhere. So I love Connecticut, and I love the arts culture we have here. Every town can boast cultural assets that contribute to a vibrant community and improve the quality of life for its residents. And that's certainly very strong here in Stamford, where I've lived my whole life. What are some of the exciting arts and cultural events and organizations that you've experienced in your community? And what was the most recent? Starting off with an easy one.
And do we want to go right down the list? Is that the easiest in the order that everyone?
Yeah, I think so.
Why don't we go to Toni then for that first one? And then Lucy's on deck.
Toni, you're muted.
Well, having represented 7 towns in Fairfield County and now potential of the 8th in Stamford, the opportunities there are too numerous to mention. I just recently was at the Ridgefield Playhouse and planning to go again, tickets for November the 6th, to have the Sphere organization, which has special needs actors. They're going to put on a performance of The Greatest Showman, one of my most favorite movies and theater productions, but there's just too many. There is a theater group in every one of these towns that are fabulous. The Levitt Pavilion puts on great shows. Every historical society in every single one of these towns. Again, Westport Playhouse, Ridgefield Playhouse, Wilton Playhouse. We have theater groups in the Aldrich Art Museum. We can go on, Westport Museum of Contemporary Art. There's street fairs all the time that have artists. But more importantly, I came to know about music and art through the public schools in Norwalk, Connecticut, having come from a farm in Italy. We did not have any resources to ever be exposed. And so our teachers and our public schools brought us to New York, brought us to plays, brought us to operas, brought us to symphonies. And my brother became a great violinist. And by the way, a prodigy in art. And he and his wife now are leading artists in San Diego and California and have commercialized their skill. So they have companies, and my sister-in-law does covers of Infusion magazine for Harvard Medical School. So, the arts is also business.
Good, thank you, Toni. Lucy, next.
First of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much to the Cultural Alliance for hosting this evening. This is really wonderful for us to come together and talk and really get the information out there to folks about all of the wonderful things that Fairfield County has to offer. My favorite things really are Lockwood Matthews Mansion. I love it during the holiday season, Carriage Barn, Maritime Aquarium, the Norwalk Art Space, the Norwalk Symphony. I love the NICE Festival, Janet. It's great. But the real gist of it is there is something for everyone in our community that wants to be satisfied by seeing the arts, whether it's music, art, or any sort of entertainment. So thank you again for hosting. And my last one I visited was the Carriage Barn. And I love it because they always have a kind of a rotation of things from local artists, which are really fun to see.
Great, thank you. Kimberly?
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm just really delighted to be a part of this. I myself am a piano player, and I have fond memories of my mother, forcing me to practice, but I'm so grateful because it has allowed me in my busy life as a mom and a legislator to have some place I can go to sort of tap into my humanity again. And I find that all of our towns, Greenwich and Stamford that I represent, it's like peeling an onion or following a thread. You discover these beautiful little art centers. I most recently listened to live music at Roger Sherman Park down by the water, and that was lovely. There's just something about live music. I also attended a performance at the Young Artists Philharmonic, and these are young students who were given an opportunity to study the classical music, and their performance was just sublime. I'm often at the Greenwich Arts Council where they do piano recitals, ballet shows that my children participate in. And recently a very good friend of mine had an art show. And I volunteer at the collections committee at the Greenwich Historical Society. And one of my favorite places to be in Stamford is the Stamford Museum and Nature Center. And I know there's just so much more. And I'm delighted to have had an earlier conversation with Lou about curtain call in Stamford. So thank you so much. And I look forward to the rest of our conversation.
Great. Next, thank you for that. Sujata.
Thank you so much. And thank you for this opportunity to talk about how vital the arts really are in so many different ways. In Trumbull, we have a very vibrant Trumbull Arts Festival that is well attended every year. The Trumbull Youth Association always put on productions that just are incredible. I mean, and it brings the whole community there, parents, families, it's amazing. And the most recent thing in Trumbull, I have to say, is just an example of why the arts is so important. This is a story you may all have heard of because it's a young woman, Amanda Mamana, who's on the X Factor, and she's from Trumbull. She's so incredible. She actually has a speech impediment. And what's incredible when she sang her original song is that goes away when she sings. And it sort of tells you why the power of arts. It helps us access capabilities that we may not be able to access without tapping into that other potential. So she's a tremendous, she's been tremendously successful, but her story, I think, resonates so much because it's a story of why the arts is so important.
Great, thank you for that. And Chris?
Yeah, the most recent event I went to was in Stratford. We had a Latin music festival to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. It was a great, vibrant event full of not just live music performances and dance, but also, a lot of local vendors. Stratford's Arts Alliance in general really does a great job of putting together a very varied sort of patchwork of opportunities in our community. They host art galleries, partnering with other nonprofits like Sterling House. I've even seen they are doing virtual portrait sessions through Zoom, leveraging technology. They do some plein air events as well. We have a Make Music event in Stratford. I know a lot of local towns participate in that as well, that I think is in conjunction with the Arts Alliance. And Stratford and Shelton and a lot of the other towns do a lot of summer music series as well. There's a lot of live music going on in Stratford, Shelton, Seymour, Monroe. And actually, Shelton, I think, has a fall music event that's an extension of that coming up this next weekend, which I'm excited for. Shelton also has an arts league hosting arts classes and events. And I know, all those sorts of little organizations, ways to not just let the community see art, but to become a part of it and really get involved themselves and make art. I think those are really especially exciting opportunities that I'm seeing a number of organizations in my district offer.
Thank you for that. And Don?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us. Yeah, so for me, somebody growing up who wasn't ever good at art or music, being involved in going to shows and music and attending art festivals has really been something special for me. And my kids have actually gotten me more into it because my daughter actually is a pretty good artist. So I'm also lucky because not only living in Norwalk and New Canaan, I own restaurants, and we have one restaurant that we do a lot of live music at. So we've had, just this year alone, we've had over 30 bands come through our restaurant. So that's been a really great way to stay connected with the local artists. And also, we recently attended the new Bridgeport Amphitheater and saw Darius Rucker, which is a beautiful amphitheater. If you haven't been up there, it's an absolutely great place to watch music. Some of the best part of where I live in the Silver Mine areas, we have the Silver Mines Art Center, and it's an amazing facility. They do a great job with outreach. They have beautiful pictures and art in there, and also the Carriage House in New Canaan does a really, really great job. Again, somebody who has never been really good at art myself or music, it's been a really, really nice thing to have an opportunity to be touched by so many great artists and music in this area.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to the second question. I believe that Miggs Burrow. Miggs, you're going to be handling this ballot.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Thanks to David and all of you for this opportunity. My parents moved to Westport in 1950. My father was part of the arts immigration, I guess, with all the artists that came during the Mad Men era as an illustrator. So I grew up in that household and kind of saw what went on and kind of followed that path. And it's been said by, well, I've heard it said, I don't know how many who originated that art is the oxygen that enriches and enlightens a community. And I'm wondering, the question is, I guess, do you subscribe to that notion? And if so, what plans, if any, might you have to keep the oxygen flowing and infuse art into your community?
We'll start with Toni.
Well, it's a great question, Miggs, and you, in fact, have helped to promote the arts locally. Over the years, I've been very involved. In fact, I was on the board of the Weir Farm Art Center, which Alden Weir is one of the famous artists that we've had here in our area. And on the board, we provided artist in residence programs, but throughout the time I've been in office, we've helped to promote individual artist programs and projects by providing grants and outright scholarships to various individuals that applied to get those grants from the state. So the state of Connecticut actually did have and has had, I don't know what has happened in the interim. I've not been in office for 4 years, but hopefully those programs continue, although, you know, budgetary problems have always put that in jeopardy, as is in many ways. I also promoted, believe it or not, through the school system, having worked hard to create a mandatory half credit in the arts to graduate from high school, because I saw too many schools cut arts and music programs when budgets were constrained. And I absolutely believe it's an essential part of a well-rounded, good education. And we have to fight for that because we lose ground and we lose the talent. Additionally, not only focusing the state on it, but also promoting it locally. I think we all can do, even as private citizens, but certainly in office, we can certainly highlight the various artist performances. One other way that I did help Westport was to help secure $300,000 for the Levitt Pavilion, so it could be upgraded and constructed. And that we've had many that have come to the state for help when it was close to losing its actual facilities and its ability to continue to stay through those tough economic times. When things get better, people out there, they're more able to participate. So we have to keep our eyes on that and make sure we protect it. And I will certainly continue to do that.
Thank you, Toni. Lucy, next.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question, Miggs. I fully agree that we need to do this. And I don't believe it's just in our local communities, but across the state. You know, the arts bring so much to Connecticut in form of tourism dollars and really helps the local economy. So that is super important to me. I know the ECD does a wonderful job at showing the impact of the arts to our local economy. And how I've been able to support that is not just with my vice chair of appropriations hat on, making sure that we we fund these organizations through the DECD budgets, but also personally promote them at, community coffees through social media to ensure that folks in our communities are aware of what's going on. Things like we had over the summer, great programs at the Maritime Aquarium for young folks to participate in that. And entrance fees were free. A lot of people didn't know about it. And so having that social media presence really does make a difference.
For my part, I'll add, I agree with what Lucy and Toni said. And to add on to them, I would say that ensuring that our state has a strong economy is vital to the arts, because as I go knocking on doors, I hear so much of a level of stress that people have, and just trying to ensure that their family budget can meet the rising expenses now. Yes, the arts can help us all deal with stress in our lives, but at the same time, the arts needs funding, and to be in the arts and to support it, we need to have the time, energy, and resources. There's something very civilized about art, and it takes a stable civil society, I think, to continue to promote the education, and celebration of the arts. So I'll add that, yes, we want to keep funding it with generous state grants as much as possible. I also personally like to support it and promote it. And I'll add, I think, ensuring that our state follows sound economics so that not only business and individuals, but even artists and those who treasure the art can benefit from strong, stable economy in our state. And one more thing is, there's a lot going on at the federal level that we can't control, but if our state is following principles of sound economics, then like all of us here can actually weather the economic storm better. And that's what we all want, is we don't, COVID shows us how damaging it can be when we have these huge disruptions, and we don't want that for any part of our economy or society, including those who work in the arts.
Thank you. Sujata?
Thank you. Yeah, I love that description of the arts as sort of the oxygen of the community, or the lifeline of the community, because I would love to see, communities thinking more broadly about the integration of arts in other organizations and other areas that you may not think actually tap in to different fields in the arts. So we know this during the pandemic, because in the medical field, right, that the therapeutic aspect of art became very clear. So I teach at Quinnipiac University, and as a legal scholar, one of, if you want to perform well on the LSAT for analytical reasoning, one of the best majors is a music major, because of the way you recognize patterns. And I don't think people think about the analytical reasoning that comes with that. We did an event in Trumbull for the Declaration of Independence reading, and we involved the Trumbull Youth Association. So students who could perform, either a song there or to recreate, the historical moments. And I'm on the board of the YMCA, and it was nice to connect the YMCA to cultural organizations or individuals. For example, they just offered a Bollywood class for students, and to, we don't think of the YMCA necessarily in that arts category, but they are. And so how can we think more broadly about the integration of the arts in these other organizations that, in fact, where art is in fact vital to what they do as well.
Thank you for that. Chris?
Yeah, as many others before I've mentioned, I think, hoping to amplify the efforts of local organizations, both through attending events and using, whatever voice or platform I had as a public official, I would want to do that. And when it comes to grants and funding, for me, it's really important to be on the ground, developing relationships with those organizations so that I can understand the ways that we can help them more, understand what the needs are, especially over the last 2 years of the pandemic. The needs of a lot of the organizations have shifted drastically. I was in a similar event to this for the nonprofit organizations recently, and hearing about the ways funding can shift overnight. I just want to be really an ally who shows up not only for the events and listens to the organizations about their changing needs and doing whatever I can, to meet them. In particular, as somebody who lives in Stratford, one of my biggest interests, of course, would be in what we could do with the potential of the Shakespeare Theater grounds, which right now there are some good live events happening there, but it's not at all what it once was.
Great. Thank you. Don, let's finish with you then.
Yeah, there's a lot of great feedback in here, and I think all the candidates in here have hit on a lot of important and good points. One of the things I would say as a business person, I would say that the business community can also do a great job partnering with the art community to help promote, new artists in music and all the kinds of thing, and using their venues to help support local artists. So take some of the budgetary constraints off our state budget, and using that private business partnership with artists to help try to, support them in any way we can. I think it's important to try to find different ways to think about how we fund these important initiatives. And sometimes, especially with the budget constraints that we're facing, not only in the state, but the federal level, we're going to need to find different ways to help make sure that these important programs don't get cut or have their budgets cut, because we're going to have to make some tough decisions. And I think if we do a better job of partnering and making sure that we lift up these organizations and these musicians and use our venues to help promote them, I think we can all kind of do a better job of promoting arts and getting people more involved with music and art and that kind of thing, because it is important to people's not only education but mental well-being.
Great, thank you. We're going to have the next question is going to be asked by Rick Reyes. Rick.
Yes, hi, how are you? My name is Rick. I recently became a Fairfield resident, but all my life I spent in Bridgeport. I'm a Bridgeport native and spent many years in the arts in Bridgeport. Still, I'm actually here at the Ness Arts Factory in Bridgeport, and I've seen what the power of art and the art community, because I think that all the positive things that are happening in Bridgeport is really because of the arts and the artist community. And it seems to be something that everybody agrees that it brings people together in Bridgeport. So my question is with Connecticut, Connecticut is often thought as a pass-through state, yet our state has many world-class arts institutions and is rich in cultural, has a rich cultural landscape. Why do you think arts and culture are important in Connecticut? And if you can tell me what is unique about our state's arts and culture.
Well, Ricardo, congratulations to you, first of all, for the fabulous new venue where international acts are coming there and drawing so many people. It's a beautiful facility. When you drive by on 95 and overlook it, it's fantastic. I think what's unique about Connecticut, two things. One, we are one of the most oldest states in the country. We have a colonial heritage that very few other states have. And as a result, we can tap into that history. We have so many fabulous museums, historical museum, history museums of our colonial past, and it teaches people from outside of Connecticut and our own young people about the valuable history of how this nation was created and how Connecticut was a land of innovation. And it also was a breadbasket for the country. So those history museums that we have in almost every single town are unique and very few, especially if you travel out west, right? And we're also, because we're close to New York and Boston, we have access to incredible talent, and increasingly they move here. So we have artists, we have writers, we have producers of all kinds of great artwork right in our backyard, and we can tap into them, and they often do. In some of our playhouses, we have some national actors or international talent right here, singers and so forth. So we have that ability to have them be presented to us. I'm also reminded of the various communities that have Holocaust museums as well, that bring in history to our state. But what I'd like to end up with talking about is how I believe art is business, and that right now in our life and in our industries and our businesses in the state, you cannot escape using an artistic, whether it's music, whether it's graphic arts, whether it's video. I can tell you, they're the key to almost any way to universally communicate in private sector, in government, in our educational systems. And it's the way we communicate. And I think that we should make sure people understand the value of that in our entire society right now. Not only is it wonderful to remove stress, to bring total enjoyment, to reach across people's sensitivities and different points of view, it brings people together, actually. But it also is the way in which we conduct business today. You cannot communicate. Look at us right here, even online. There isn't one website for any organization that doesn't use video, doesn't use art, doesn't use some form of artistic design to be able to communicate what it does and what services they provide or what they would like to do, or even in fundraising. So I think that's incredibly important, and we should be touting that. I think we are very lucky to have so many talented people that surround us, both in our state and our next door neighbor states, that love to come and live here.
Thank you. Thank you, Toni. Lucy?
That's a great question. And I think with the amount of talent that we see both in Boston and in New York that are living in Connecticut now, that are, like in Shakespeare in the Sound is a great example. We're able to get talented actors who might be on Broadway otherwise, but because of the proximity are able to nip over to Westport for a few nights for that performance. Or likewise at the Norwalk Symphony, we see a lot of musicians coming from our metropolitan hubs that live locally and that do want to participate in the local symphonies. It is vital also for creating more sort of buzz to our area, and companies that see that we have such great talent that are part of local performances here. They are excited about moving their businesses here because they see it as a real economic driver for them as well. And also we are lucky in so many ways because we are close that some of the more big sort of worldwide art exhibits that might not be going through other areas with a lower level of population, like maybe Fairfield County, are coming because, the incremental cost for them to come to our area, and it's so close because we are so close to New York, they're able to come and take part of their exhibits here locally.
Thank you. Kimberly.
Well, I feel like I'm always learning and discovering more about Connecticut, and this arts and culture angle is something I definitely want to dig into more. As to why it's important to us in Connecticut uniquely, one thing I've always loved about our state is that we don't have county level government. And so that means all 169 towns and small cities are really self-determined by the people who live there. And so a real part of the character of the people of Connecticut is that we are doers, and artists are doers. And so maybe that's why, you get off the highway and you turn down follow any stone cobbled road and follow any tree-lined street, and you come to some kind of creative thing that's going on. I've always loved that part about Connecticut. And also, of the 169, more than 100 of our towns were founded in the 1600s and 1700s. So it's a long time that Connecticut people have been independent and creative on their own. Maybe that's why.
Good, thank you. Sujata.
Thank you. So why Connecticut? You know, I think we have both a history and a present of arts in Connecticut. We have some of the schools, there are at least 3 and more that are the named to be the top art schools in the country in Connecticut. And we have several of those schools here. So we're producing students. I just learned today that Stephen Sondheim was an intern at the Westport Country Playhouse. So we have a history, right, of producing brilliant artists, and we need to cultivate that. So I think we have that history here, and also, you know, for investors, it's a smaller community, so it's different than Boston and New York. So as an investor, your dollar goes further. There's a stronger reach, a broader reach, because you can reach the entire state in a way that you can't in some of the other states based on population. So I think that means something. I think that probably has led to the robustness and the vibrancy of the culture that we already have here. So tracing it from our history to our present.
Okay. Thank you for that, Chris.
Yeah, I think that, you know, a lot of the things that have been mentioned previously are great in terms of the arts. I especially, again, feel the history, the combination of the history the state has with the proximity to, right, New York and Boston is a really great mix for a lot of local communities. In my district alone, I think we have like 5 or 6 different little museums that are all really remarkable. We have an aerospace museum because Stratford is in the running for claiming to have the first man-made flight in the country. You know, we have our own African-American History Museum. We have a helicopter museum as well with Sikorsky, you know, in our backyard. We have Booth Park, which is this really interesting amalgamation of all these different exhibits, from model trains to replicas of buildings, and its own observatory with its own astronomical society that meets twice a month. So there's a lot of really cool local events that go, I think, hand in hand with the bigger cultural events we think about, which is the music and the art and things like that, that really, for me locally, I've seen a lot of. And Shelton has its own historic history center as well, where you can look at all sorts of different, you know, pieces of this New England heritage that we share.
Good. Thank you.
Don?
Don, this is, you can take this one now. I think you're on mute, I believe, Don.
Yeah.
I wonder if Don.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, there we go. Good.
Why Connecticut? Well, we have some of the most beautiful coastline in the world. For one, so I mean, if that can't inspire artists, I don't know what would. But kind of piggybacking off what Toni said, I mean, we have a deep history here, and being one of the oldest states in the country, and all the history that comes with that, and all the amazing architecture and museums that we do have. It's just, again, it's one of those places where if you can't be drawn to Connecticut's beauty, I don't know what would inspire you more than a place like this. And with the migration that we're seeing out of New York, with people coming into Connecticut, I think it's only going to make Connecticut even better in terms of our artistic mix and changes that I think we'll see from a culture standpoint and as well as our artistic standpoint. So I think it's important to understand, again, that we live in a beautiful, beautiful state, and it's important to make sure that we continue to create an environment where people want to come here. And that's what has gotten me into running for office, is because I want to make sure that we maintain that ability to attract the most talented people in the world.
Good. Well, thank you for that question, Rick.
Steve?
Yes, David.
I think I'm going to defer as time is running out, and I
noticed that as well. So
I think we can jump to Wendy.
Okay, good. Wendy, take it away.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. Fantastic. So Wendy Roseberry, I am married to Brian Whelan, who's an artist. Brian and I worked in Europe for many years and then came here to the States to expand his reach. We picked Connecticut because his clients were in New York City and Boston, and because we could find a decent sized outbuilding for his studio. So congratulations, everybody, for ticking out all the boxes we had for finding a location, and we just love it. And you're right, it is beautiful and terrific people. So I'll get to question number 5, which has to do with economic principles. And the arts and creativity have a proven track record of economic benefit to our state. In 2020, arts and cultural production in Connecticut added $8.9 billion to our economy and accounted for 3.2% of our gross state product, while the arts and cultural industries employed close to 50,000 workers with wages and benefits totaling more than $5 billion. Despite these contributions, the arts have historically been first on the chopping block when it comes to budget priorities. What would you do to help keep arts and creativity funded in our state at a level that recognizes their economic importance?
Well, I love this question because I think from previous answers, I went on about how I know that business and arts are so intricately tied today more than ever before, simply because of the way in which we communicate. It's critical in every aspect of life, whether you run a nonprofit, whether you are a retail store, whether you're a pizza place, it doesn't matter, whether you're a scientist or a university, to get your message out, to accomplish your goals, you need to communicate using some sort of art form. And that's so key. And I've been there firsthand. I was on the State Board of Ed when the city of Hartford cut out all of its music programs, and I went crazy. That formed my passion when I was in the legislature to mandate arts and music in the schools, and not to let them fall by the wayside during budget times, because I think it's so essential. Your previous question was about how did it reduce stress in COVID? Oh my God, the music and the films and the things that people were drawn to get away from the stresses they were accomplishing. My daughter-in-law is a family therapist. She sees children on Zoom all the time that have issues and uses different forms of art to communicate and have them communicate how they are feeling. So I would be a passionate spokesperson. Speaking firsthand, I have a brother and sister-in-law that are commercial graphic designers that started in fine art in the finest art schools in the country and did portrait painting of astronauts, and they're in museums, but they make their living by working to animate the way science, new devices that doctors can use in curing problems in the brain or in different parts of the body. So they've translated their art capability into the sciences and other ways to make a living, but also they've helped to save lives because of her his expert capability to draw, illustrate, and animate on computers using their tremendous art talent. So I think I can be a pretty powerful spokesperson to make sure we don't cut those art credit courses required, and we don't cut them in our communities, because they're integral to our life right now.
Thank you. Lucy.
Thank you very much. Right now, we have allocated as part of our committee and state budget about over $13 million just to the tourism fund alone. And that money we see is coming back in great numbers. I think it was like 15 or 16 billion in business sales that are supported by traveler spending. And that was pre-pandemic. And we've noticed that even in 2021 and 2022, with more people staying locally, those numbers have even gone up. So I'm looking forward to seeing the Connecticut Office of Tourism reports. The long and short of it is, we see that the tourism industry and the arts in particular have such a huge impact on our local economy, generating over $2 billion in state tax revenues alone. And we are able to see that return through what we invest in the industry. But putting the financials aside, it is definitely, food for the soul as well. We see how important it is for arts, for people's mental well-being, and people's happiness. So thank you for that question. And what I would be doing is making sure that every one of my colleagues in appropriations would really see the return on investment that Connecticut gets from their investment into the arts.
Good, Kimberly?
I think I would add that often I promote for citizens to see the state budget as their own budget, that it's not necessarily, something that's removed. And so when you start to see the spending as being your own, you can also look at how, each of these people spend their money. And personally, we do invest a lot in the arts in our home. Each of our children, my husband and I have valued that they must know how to draw, for example, which seems like something that's sort of fallen by the wayside. But in an earlier time, people learned drawing so that they could see the world and, put it to pen and paper. And I think music is so important. I had all of my children learning music as well. I don't sit on appropriations, but I will pay more attention to how the state funds the art and is a partner to ensure that the arts is a vital part of our state's economy, because I do that personally in my home. Thank you.
Sujata?
Let me echo and just emphasize what both Toni and Lucy just said, because one, to Toni's point, I think that the arts are vital and they are life-saving in different ways. And it would be great for people to see how they're integrated in so many other areas. And we see that clearly in the pandemic during mental health. I mean, the arts literally saved lives. There, Amanda, who's this example of a young person from Trumbull who has a speech impediment and just performs beautifully with no speech impediment when she's singing. The arts allows people to tap into capabilities that that you may not otherwise have, and so they're so vital in that way, and they're integrated. And I'd love for people to understand that music majors, right? That's actually learning music. That's an analytical skill, it's not just about creativity, although that's important too. So in that way, integrated into other fields, it's life-saving. And then to Lucy's point, the multiplier effect, that for every dollar you're investing, you're getting $7 back. That's a pretty good investment in the arts. You're supporting the local economy, because as events take place, you're supporting local businesses that are also then thriving. And so you're supporting and contributing to a vibrant economy. So those two things, I think, make the arts quite vital, in fact, in Connecticut.
Great, thank you. Chris?
Yeah, as someone who, I'm new to politics entirely, but my background is in business and education. There's two parts of the conversation that I think are sticking out to me so far. One is about, again, the importance of the educational components and the educational value of the arts, and making sure that we have arts integrated into our system of education, and look for ways to use existing events and organizations also to promote educational elements outside of the traditional school environment for that. And then on the business side, right, the ROI that Lucy talked about, and I appreciate you guys hosting an event like this and sharing your perspective and sharing your information with us, which helps give us as potential representatives, the ammunition we need to say, look, this is important. Look at the numbers. Look at what this is doing economically for us. And I intend to be someone who's a listener, a team player, an advocate, always willing to come out, hear what the needs are for the local organizations, hear where the biggest impact can be made, and try to work with that. And I talked previously about being flexible, again, with needs, especially through things like COVID and stuff like that. But the other side to that coin is, stability in funding. And that's really key. And I think that it's something that in this state, we're making huge strides in the right direction when it comes to our budget, when it comes to paying down debts that we haven't paid down in decades, to free up funds and to put us on a track where we can make sure whatever commitments we are making financially, we can keep, because that's especially devastating. If you get a one-off grant that dries up overnight, we need to make sure the commitments we make, in communicating with you guys, we're able to keep year over year. And that's, again, the business side and the analytical side of what I want to contribute is I want to push the state to have that vision that isn't just about next year, it's about 5 and 10 years out for this and all of these other meaningful initiatives.
Well, thank you, Wendy, for that question. And I think that we've had a couple of people had to drop out. So we're going to go to the next question with Janet Evelyn. And Janet.
Yeah, hello, everyone. It is great to be with all of you. Thank you. I'm delighted to hear your commitment to arts and culture. I'm the founder and executive director for the Norwalk International Cultural Exchange. We specifically started this organization to celebrate our multiculturalism and our multicultural art forms. We are steeped in the preservation and cultivation of folk and traditional arts, which is what we showcase. We have been showcasing at the annual NICE Festival that we do. And this program provides an outlet and an opportunity for marginalized groups and artists to showcase and develop their art forms. And so my question that we have has to do with a role that has traditionally been at the Connecticut State Department of Education, and that is an arts education specialist that has been critical to assuring that our state and national arts educations and standards are consistently implemented across our many diverse, our many communities. And especially those communities that are under-resourced communities where students' access to the arts is often extremely limited compared to some of our wealthier communities like New Canaan and Westport and Greenwich and Weston and Reading and so forth. So my question is, if elected, if you're re-elected, would you support refilling the arts education specialists at the State Department of Education? And if you do support refilling this position, what specific actions or types of programs would you charge or encourage this staff person to implement to address under-resourced school districts and to bring more art engagement and experiences to these children and to these families that would not actually get the opportunity to go to Broadway, to see a Broadway show, to see a flamenco performance, to see a Chinese dance group perform, to learn about African influence in Puerto Rican music, so forth and so on. What specifically would you do if you were to support putting this staff member back in place?
Well, Janet, from some of the comments I made earlier, you can already get a hint as to my answer to that for sure. Yes, emphatically, yes, we need that person. I told you that I grew up in a very poor community in a factory town in Connecticut. It was a poor school system, yet it was supported by corporations there that provided us opportunities to take field trips to Lincoln Center, to an opera, to be exposed to art, where as children, we didn't have the financial resources in our home to do that. And I understand personally what that was like. And my brother turned out to be a genius in art and in music, and that formed his life. So it transformed him and me. We even had a teacher that once took him to art museums on her free time because she knew we couldn't do that. So and when I was on the State Board of Ed, that's what pained me the most, is when they eliminated arts in their program because of budget cuts. And I quickly went in the legislature, put in bills to require those to graduate, so they couldn't cut them out any longer, particularly for those students. Affluent communities, the parents can do that. They can take them, they can expose them. But in poor communities, people don't realize you don't have the money to take a trip to New York. You don't have the resources or even the knowledge. And it's unfair because you can ignite something so powerful that it can be their life's work, as happened with us. So you can be assured that I can not only push for that, but I can be a strong advocate having that personal, experience.
Thank you for that, because our program, and I'm very honored again to be a part of this group. We provide a space where underserved families really get the opportunity to experience these different types of art forms that they would not normally get an opportunity to do. Yeah.
Thank you, Janet, for that question. I fully agree. We do need to look at this role, just like we have reading specialists and math specialists and other specialists in our state that ensure consistency across our state in terms of curricula. I believe that we need to have the same sort of lens when we look at the art education specialists, and we need to ensure that, you know, wherever you are in the state, that you are exposed to the different types of art, and your zip code doesn't dictate your ability to get engaged and ability to take in the different types of art. And I do believe that one of the benefits of COVID has really been making art more accessible. So you can give little snippets of art to classrooms in terms of different programs of things that, you know, children may never get the opportunity to see because of how things have been cataloged, or musicians that have done performances in all far afield places. And we're able to bring those into our classroom, but that does require consistency. It does require funding. So it is something that I would definitely support and see that this would also have a huge impact on so many communities, especially ones that do not have the ability to get into see operas and plays and other sort of art centers.
Thank you. I see. Let's see.
I think Kimberly had to step off.
I think she had to stop. Yeah. Why don't we go to?
I think I'm next after that.
Yeah. Why don't you do that?
Okay. Right. Yeah. I just wanted to. Yeah. Janet, just first of all, thank you for the work that you do. You know, increasingly, I have 2 daughters in the public schools, and the international festivals that have been organized at the schools have been so incredible, and incredible opportunities, I think, for parents and families to get involved. In fact, I organized a Bollywood stick dance for, you know, for parents and kids. We did it together, Indian, non-Indian, and you know, we invited people up on stage after that, and for people to really get immersed in those cultural opportunities. It is one of the most popular events at the school. And that's true for every school that has these cultural festivals. So, you know, just wanted to thank you for the work you're doing, to say that in particular, cultural festivals I think are really vital. And then of course, support for the schools, you know, just echoing what has been said already. And maybe particularly Toni's point that, you know, you really, I think that it's vital in what I said before, it's vital in so many different ways, because you tap into capabilities when you allow students to access the arts. And one thing maybe to think about is, you know, with the resources being cut, there's an increasing burden on parents to be able to pay for things like instruments and trips, and, you know, to be able to allow children to have access to that. So that's something certainly somebody should look into to make sure that those resources are available, and that students have the ability to tap in to really what's vital to so many different fields.
So why don't we go to Chris then?
Thank you again, Janet, for the question, and yeah, your organization's vision and results. That's a really incredible space to be in. So thank you. Absolutely, we need to bring back a position like this to make it clear across, you know, the spectrum of our education system that the arts has a place, and it's partially a symbolic thing to have someone in that role, but also, right, to have someone who can make sure that we can absolutely enforce some sort of standards about making sure there is some sort of floor to the level of arts exposure that happens through our public education is a significant and important thing. And as mentioned, it's not just, the having that floor. We need the funding to back it up. And it's not just about what happens in the school during the school day. It is about, right, the equipment and the tools that you need to do some of these things. And especially, I think about, right, those programs and those after school trips and adventures that really is where you see the gap in what happens from zip code to zip code in Connecticut. It's not just during the school day, it's what happens after. And those kind of trips are a huge deal. And any way that the state can support that or incentivize, partnerships between nonprofits or private organizations to try to help make some of those things happen is a huge deal, I think. And yeah, just in general, I think making sure we're doing everything we can to ensure that educational component and educational value of the arts is not lost on our students across the state.
Don, did you want to finish things up or?
Yeah, I apologize for dropping off before in the last question.
No,
My phone
fine.
died on me.
If you wanted to
scramble,
you can address it if you like.
Yeah, I think the question was adding another layer at the state level. Is that correct?
Yeah, the question was putting back in place the arts education specialists, a role at the State Department of Education, and specifically what would you encourage that staff person to do to address the underserved communities or the disparities between arts in affluent communities versus underserved communities?
My instincts would be not to add another layer of management. I'd rather put those resources at the ground level and put it, whether it's investing in more art teachers or making sure we get maybe the administrators that are overseeing these schools have a better background or training in the arts so they can help implement these things. I always believe that if you put more resources in at the local levels and on the ground, they're always going to be better used than from a top-down directive. And so my instincts would say not to create another management role. I would say I put more boots on the ground and put those resources in the schools and in the communities that we're looking to help cultivate and increase the arts. I would rather have that partnership with the private businesses and the nonprofits and help build that coalition versus adding another layer of state government. And I think if we do it that way, I think we're going to get more input from the community. I think we're going to get a lot more, I think you'll get a lot more participation from the business community that will want to partner for these kind of things. And I think the more you can get the community involved and do more from the ground up versus the top down, I think you're going to get better results. That's just my natural instincts, my natural expertise that I've seen just in the business environment. So I would say no to adding the upper level, but I would definitely add resources down at the ground level.
Well, I think we're going to wrap things up a little bit. I will give David the final word, but I wanted to thank you all for participating. And Toni has a burning question here. Yeah, I'll give you, go ahead.
2 seconds, 2 seconds?
Yes.
Okay, so one thing we didn't mention, the state could fund building entertainment and arts and museums and things that attract people rather than a casino. They should be supporting the family entertainment like the Stepping Stones and the Maritime.
Good. So thank you, Toni. And it was nice to be part of this event. I think it was quite interesting and some very interesting positions and a good back and forth. And I just wanted to mention that I want to thank David for asking me to participate in this event, and also mention, because he may not, that he does a radio show also on WPKN. He's been doing it for how many years now, David? There must be at least more than 5 or 6 years, right? All right. Well, he's on mute, so we're not going to know the real answer.
Sorry, about 4 or 5. Yeah.
Okay, good. But it's called Spotlight on Arts and Culture, and it takes place the second Monday of the month at 12 noon, part of our community programming. So it's always quite an interesting show. And what is the topic coming up next week?
Well, we're introducing Randy Cohen from Americans for the Arts as a way of launching our national participation in the Arts and Economic Prosperity Study. And then we'll be looking at some highlights coming up with the Bridgeport Art Trail this year.
Great, thank you. I'll let you have the last word.
Well, of course, thanks to everyone. Thank you very much for the candidates. And thank you very much for our members who came up and asked the questions and introduced themselves. That was really terrific. Thank you. We've recorded this and we'll put this up on YouTube. So if you like, you can share it with friends, colleagues, those who weren't able to make it tonight. And we hope you share the word. And good luck to everybody on November the 8th.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.